Welcome to the Nightclub, guys. It's your host, the Night Wrencher. I know I've had a lot of product review videos lately. Trust me, it's all because I'm really excited to actually get this build started, and in order to avoid any kind of questions down the road, it's better to explain what parts I'm using and what they're for before I start just going on the build and having people ask a bunch of questions. That way, if people are like, what AFR gauge are you using, or what carburetor are you using, then I'll be able to just point them straight to the video that I have already done instead of trying to make new videos and trying to catch up with all your guys' questions. So originally this was going to be like maybe a 15 or 20 minute video, but there was just so much information I actually had to cut this up into 3 different videos. This is the first video, I'm going to have the second video, and then the last video. And actually the last video is the most important one, and that's going to give you basically the secret to actually get your Holley carburetor dialed in regardless of what everything else that you're using. As long as you get that last part set up, you're going to be golden. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this. That being said, the biggest question that I've been getting so far as of late is what carburetor am I going to be using on the LS Swap Turbo Dodge? And the answer is right here. A couple videos back, I actually went through and explained what carburetor this was. This is a 650 alcohol Mighty Demon carburetor. This obviously is a double pumper carburetor, so it has a pump in the front and it has a pump in the back. This is also a special carburetor because it comes with down leg boosters, front and back, and it also comes with adjustable air bleeds from the factory, and it has enough room for you to put in the air bleeds that you need instead of trying to drill your own. I do have a video on drilling your own bleeds, but for the sake of argument, this is already set up and good to go. I can't just go ahead and take this alcohol demon, put it on the truck, and then expect it to run. That's not exactly how it works. Because of the way alcohol and methanol actually works, it runs completely different to gasoline. The emulsion circuit's completely different. The air bleeds are different. The jets are different. Everything's different. So I've got to set up this carburetor to run standard 87 octane gasoline, which is what my truck runs now. Then I'm going to make the switch to E85, and so I'm going through the internals a second time. And then finally, when the turbo is hooked up to the carburetor, and that's going to be after I do a dyno session right before we switch over, we're going to be installing an aftermarket cam and then doing the tuning on the carburetor, and then we're going to be installing the turbo and then doing the tuning on the carburetor again. And I want to document this so people have a general idea of how the circuitry works every time you make a different change. The first step is actually assembling the carburetor. So in front of me, I've got the main body. So this is just the main body with the squirters front and back. I don't know what I'm going to be using in the rear because right now I have a vacuum secondary carburetor, but in the front, I'm going to be running the same 40 squirter that I'm running currently right now on my truck. In the rear, I'm going to probably run something easy, maybe like a 28 or a 32. Just to actually get some fuel flowing if I go into the secondaries. Usually you don't have to worry about the secondary squirter until you're figuring out how you're going to launch the truck, because you get up to a certain RPM before the secondaries open up, maybe go slightly tip into the secondaries, and then when you let off the clutch and you dump it, you go to accelerate, that's when the secondary squirter comes in. So I'm not really going to worry about it because that's not how I daily drive my truck, and that's not how I drive it at all. The only time I ever stomp on it or accelerate kind of quickly is whenever I'm going to get on the freeway or I need to pass traffic, but few and far between. As long as I can get it done without bogging, I should be okay. So I think a 32 squirter to start off in the rear is going to be enough, and I know for a fact my truck likes a 40 squirter in the front. I'm going to have a 30cc accelerator pump in the back and a 50cc accelerator pump in the front. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to go through that one at a time. So like I said, this is a 650 basically a Mighty Demon or an HP main body if we're talking more modern Holley carburetors. This never came with a choke horn, and it has radius entry venturis. I don't know how this actually works and compared to the Holley HP series, because the HP series actually has ribs right here. They actually come up all the way to the top, and it's actually more pronounced leading into it. So I don't know if that's a benefit versus the way the Demons are set up. I don't know if this is more popular just because it's a Demon design. I don't know if the HP main bodies flow more, but this is what we got, so this is what we're going with. If we flip it upside down, we can go ahead and start deciding what kind of base plate we're actually going to run. So like I said, this is a double pumper carburetor, and before you actually start messing around and start ordering base plates and stuff, one important thing you have to do is you have to make sure that the throttle plate matches the main body. And the way you figure that out is you get the proper gasket that's for this carburetor. This is a brand new gasket, and if I slip it over the bores, you can see it fits the bores properly, but more importantly, it actually fits these two holes properly. So the first hole is usually always lines up, but the second hole doesn't always line up, and I'm going to show you guys that right now. So this is a base plate that comes factory on this carburetor. As you guys can see, it has all the bells and whistles that the Barry Grant carburetors has. It has a 1.69 stamped right here, so I think that measures the throttle bore, but I'm not exactly sure. A couple features on this base plate is obviously it has a double pumper, so it's got the front and rear accelerator pump arms. It also has this fancy trick looking accelerator arm right here, and everything looks like it's built for that carb. If we go ahead and lay this gasket over, you can actually see that both of these holes line up. Obviously they're going to line up because they're part of the same carburetor. So these secondary holes are actually really important because they actually dictate that this carburetor base plate is a 4-corner idle carburetor, which means it feeds fuel from each corner of the base plate, versus a standard stock. This is a 750, 650 base plate, very similar to this, but this one, as you guys can see, it has all 4 holes, but you have this passageway right here, and what this means is that it will feed this primary idle feed right here, but then the extra fuel will actually come around right here and then feed the backside, and that's how you get to feed all 4 corners. The reason it's called a 4-corner idle versus a 2-corner idle is that 2 corners will feed the entire circuit versus 4 corners will feed each corner individually, and that actually works really well when you get into very intricate tuning, because sometimes the fuel that you need to run the top right hole will not be the same as the one you need to run the bottom. Vice versa, the left and the right will probably be different. And typically, the way that I've seen it is that every hole wants its own mix. Typically, I do like to run 2-corner idles, but as soon as you start getting to more aggressive stuff, then you do want to have complete adjustability all 4 corners of that circuit. One last thing, this carburetor base plate also has one thing going for it, and that is the fact that it has this secondary idle air adjustment. And what this does, as you guys can see, it has a threaded hole all the way to the middle, and as you pull this thing out, it actually opens this up and it equalizes the pressure on all 4 holes. So sometimes when you're trying to kind of equalize the mix between the front and the rear, you need a little bit of extra air going to each one, and that allows it to idle a little bit better. But you don't really need that unless you have these really aggressive cams that require that. We're going to be running a fairly mild cam, so that adjustment doesn't really matter. This is actually a really good base plate, but in reality, I'm going to be switching it out for this unit right here. And this is actually a billet base plate, but we are actually out of time for today. I'm going to be going over this in the next video. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher out.